All right. All right, can anyone see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. All right, so let's get started with some issue on the OLM report first, and we can move over to the registry in the second half of the meeting. All right, actually, in the beginning, I would ask if anyone having any specific issue that they want to bring up in the meeting first. We can go over those first if we want to. Does anyone have anything specifically they want to take a look? Otherwise, I will go down to the list as usual. All right, then, seemingly no one have anything specifically, so we just go down to a few new issue first, and then we will still go back to a few later. This specific one, this is the flag on the end-to-end test case that we recently having on the Pacific test case for the operator group. So we currently still looking into the fix for it. So this is nothing particularly interesting here besides just a flag on the end-to-end test that we're currently working on the fix. So I'm just gonna take a try it for now, and we'll deal with it at time.
With this one,
Go ahead, Nick.
this is interesting, and I'm wondering if it's really just the controllers not working the way we expect them to, because there's a lot of I guess shared spaghetti code between the operator group controller and the CSV controller. And I know there's been some refactoring to the operator group controller recently.
Yeah, there are changes to the operator group recently on to having some conditions, some started changing and stuff like that. But in this specific flag, there's something you can see a section of the problem here when it say there's no insufficient insolent references. It's not really to do with the operator group specifically. It's more to do with the catalog operator. For some reason, it didn't go through with the resolution process, or it did go through and the subscription didn't get updated for some reason. So the install plan references is not there. Yeah, and we currently having I'm sorry, someone saying something.
Yeah, that's my bad, Boo. I cut you off there. I'll just give some context. I was playing around with this yesterday, and I think the subscription not updating might be something to chase down, but it could also be a red herring. And it almost looked like resolution was hanging. And again, I don't have the context to know if that was the case. So we might have regressed, if that is possible, for internal config map based catalog sources, which this test does bring up.
Yeah, so when I was testing this, I noticed the resolution didn't go through. It gets stuck in the halfway through for some reason. But at the same time, recently when we're removing a certain couple checking, there's a little bit like we no longer get checking the resolution based on the timing anymore. We just let it go through. And then it's supposed to either didn't result into anything, or fully resolve into something. It's not supposed to get stuck. So that was a little bit interesting there. That's why you see this specific error, because the resolution didn't go through. So that's why there's no operator get resolved, and then obviously there's nothing to create an install plan, which in turn there's nothing to be updated on the subscription. But basing on the logging, I see it's actually get stuck. So that was something to look into. And there's another issue that you didn't put it here. At it's supposed to be a different issue altogether. I think that's with the idling connection of the gRPC as well.
Oh yeah,
that's
good
also-
call.
that-
I'll try to open a issue for that Vu. That was a good call. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's normally if you run the same task like several times in a row, you will see this specific install plan issue first, and then after that it will transitioning into the idling status of the gRPC. That thing is more to do with the catalog source didn't get updated, because we having two different controller managing the operator the catalog source at the moment. So that is a separate issue. But either way, there are a few people look into that to get the thing resolved. That may included. Hopefully we're having a PRs out to get this thing resolved. Anyway, is there anything anyone want to say about this? I'm gonna move on to the next issue.
Can we throw it in a milestone, Vu?
Yeah, we can check that for the 20. Sound good. Cool. Let's move on. This is not an end-to-end flag, right?
So I also open this occasionally, and this is more reproducible locally versus in the upstream OLM end-to-end test. But when run serially, so I guess no parallelization, it looks like there is a flake where the resource name somehow isn't populated during, it looks like a get call. And so it seems like there's a easy change, which is to actually use the resources get name fields, or just use the metadata.name exactly. But it's not entirely evident why that would happen in May, because it's using like the gen name helper function that's supposed to randomly generate stuff. I don't know if anyone has any ideas.
There could be some sort of racer artifact with the if this is happening during a test. It could be that there's some sort of pointer conflict going on, but I don't really want to speculate too much. So if a resource is created and you get a resource version and ID, like it has to have a name since it's a required field. So it would indicate maybe some problem on the client side.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why this is happening. Because any resource that we retry should having a name for this. Ethnically said it's a required field. So it's not supposed to be empty. But yeah, if changing this to be a specific function that will fix the issue, then I think that should be an easy fix that we can open a PR for. And you were saying that this is more like local testing issue than actually on the CI team. Tim?
Hey, sorry, I had too many tabs open. Yeah, so it's more reproducible outside of the operator framework OLM project CI. So maybe I was just speculating that it's less apparent when run in that project CI because we do have some parallelization, but again, it's not immediately apparent why this would be happening. I can try tracking this down. I should have some time, but I don't think this needs too much attention because we just haven't seen that flake consistently with this project.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next issue. This is the open request, feature request actually, for the optional supported resources. We do having a list of supported resources, but obviously on the cluster, that specific API or CID is supposed to be available for you to create that specific resources. In this case, I guess in this specific example, Kubernetes service model and vertical port autoscaler. For some reason, even there were supported resources, but the cluster API is not available for the resources. We cannot create the resources, and that should lead to a failure on the install plan during installation, which eventually meaning that operator will reach to the fail state because the resources didn't get installed altogether.
Yeah, so this is Chris. I actually updated some information below. It's kind of, I think it's related to the work I'm working on with the optional dependency stuff. So it's not, this is about, them auto detecting what resources you would need and selectively applying those things. And so I think it's going to be related to that work I'm going to do. So I'm going to take this as an input as a possible use case for driving that workflow.
Yeah,
sense?
from my opinion here is this is not a dependency problem. This specific operator or this specific version of this operator shouldn't be even allowed to be installed in the first place. I think this reminds me of the cluster constraint piece that this bundle should be deemed incompatible for this specific cluster because obviously it containing resources that not support in the cluster itself, right? About like selectively install certain resources on the install plan, that's a different issue there.
I mean, I guess part of it, he probably doesn't have these APIs declared in the dependencies YAML or the CSV. So I think part of it is he wants to automatically imply those as dependent GVKs if the resources are inside the bundle. And I don't think you do that today. You just this install plan just tries to install them, right?
Yes, but when you declare the GVK, you meaning that you declare you need a node operator providing this API, assuming there's an operator providing this service monitor API and vertical ports autoscaler API.
Well, the problem is if you have a manifest in your bundles directory, you don't know if it's an operator surfacing that or if it's a native API or aggregate API. You don't know what kind it is. So you can't necessarily provision it.
Yeah, I think right now we do that discovery check to make sure that the API that's coming from the bundle is on the cluster. We mainly did that for the V1 beta 1 CRD deprecation. So I think in this case, they're saying like for these custom types, if the discovery check fails, continue installing the other pieces of it, of the bundle. I think it's really reasonable.
So how would you mark that as being optional versus not? Would you have some kind of annotation on the?
No, we don't.
actual-
So what Dan just said about, if we identify that this particular resource is not really applicable to the cluster due to lacking of API, we can ignore them. But at the same time, if this specific operator require those resources, then it's going to fail eventually. I mean, even though the operator is going to get reaching to the city state, the controller of that specific operator may not working properly because it need these resources and it couldn't use that resources. That potentially the controller part will fail because
Right. That's why I'm saying this is kind of related to my optional thing, because that provides an intent of the dependency. Without having some kind of documented intent, you don't have any idea whether it's okay to make it required or not.
When I was originally reading this, I was thinking that there'd be like a bundle property or something, like a novel type that's added that when the resources in a bundle are applied to the cluster, it basically attempts to make the application, and if the application fails, because the GPK doesn't exist, it takes a look at the bundle properties and says, is there a thing that says it's okay not to apply this? Like, is it okay that this dependency doesn't exist on the cluster? And if so, then you don't fail the application, you just don't apply that resource that you can't because the GPK doesn't exist. But there's the other side of this, which I think is what your enhancement is getting into, Chris, where it's how do you represent that same intent in dependency resolution, right? So these are kind of like two different sides of the same, of a related puzzle, I guess.
Yeah, so it's discovering the intent of your dependency and what do you do with that intent and what are the consumers of that. So obviously resource applies is one of the provisioning pieces of that, one of the consumers of that intent. And so I need to include that in my spec.
Yeah.
So in any case, this doesn't look like a bug, right? This is definitely a feature, right, which is already there.
Yeah, I think this might pretty clear. I mean, even in the description set, it's the feature request. I mean,
Yeah.
for OM allow you to finding feature request on the issue. Obviously the naming of it doesn't sound like a feature request area, but it is, for bugs, request, feature, and anything in between. So that's totally fine having this here. Until we can, having an enhancement now or any kind of solution for this particular issue.
So at the bottom, I did cross-link it to another issue, which is fairly old, which is basically talking about the same exact resources, 1860. I don't know if you guys remember that one.
This is almost practically the same feature request, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So can we close one out? And I would suggest maybe closing the older one out because there's more and linking to the new one.
Yeah.
Just because Chris has a lot of elaboration on there.
Yeah, so if you guys don't mind, I'll just kind of keep plugging away at this one over the next couple of weeks. And I'll try to come up with maybe some kind of straw man on what I think this could look like.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to the next issue. I think we did talk about this before. This is the controller runtime. We having a patch for that, a patch for the controller runtime that was supposed to merge upstream, and I think it's only merged, but I think the PR to complete done this is not yet merged. Team, are you still here?
Yeah, I just haven't had the capacity to come back to it. I don't think it's super pressing, but maybe not something nice to be getting in 0.20.
Yeah, yeah, we can try to get it done sometime this week or next week. You know, I've noticed there are unit tests failing here, which is interesting. All right then. So we had a PR pending for this already. Just a matter of watching it. Hopefully, will happen soon. All right.
Can you just
Move
change
on.
the kind feature real quick on that to like kind dependency, I think? Area dependency, something, something.
Dependency change. Okay, we have that.
Yeah, it's not really a feature.
Can I remove this? All right.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nick. Next. Oh, so this is the issue, not the issue, but the behavior that sometimes we do result dependency. I mean, result dependency meaning installing or processing multiple operator, and the outcome will be contained within one single install plane. For example, in this specific case, there are two operator, and then when they get installed together or upgrade happening, all of them will get resolved into one single install plane. And because in the same namespace, so when you approve that install plan, they will installing both. There's no way for you to select one, only a subset of resources that are associated with a specific operator to get installed. So this is the current behavior of OM, unfortunately. I'm trying to think if there's, go ahead, Nick, I'm sorry.
Do you want to just assign this to me? Because I can go and look through. I feel like this question has come up before. And our answer has been like in Ruckback and Duppy, we're reworking.
Okay, absolutely.
Stuff. So
to me, this is a feature because this is the existing behavior.
Yeah, it'd be really good if this use case could be documented and how it's going to be solved by the new APIs. Because then you could just point to that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I think that's why Nick asked this to be assigned to him so he can look into it with the Ruckback and Bundle API work that he's currently involved in. So that's so good.
There's also definitely other issues that are like the same question sitting around. We probably answered this before.
But yeah, I have answered this and my team has asked this probably about a dozen times. Because this is a common one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, even in that case, like the answer is it's probably not clear, or it's probably I don't know if we'll ever be able to get like a isolated approval for just one thing when you're like resolving dependencies. Because what does it mean to approve one thing versus the set of things you need for the cluster to work properly?
Yeah, it's
But there's
understanding what
shades.
your generational algorithm is for a dependency scope. How do you figure that out as a unit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, even this is the cluster code scope namespace. They are only installed in a specific namespace first, right? Before they propagate it to the other namespace. And when they resolve, they will resolve in the same namespace together. So most of the time, if the timing working out right, it's gonna be resolved together and end up with only one install plan. And that's certainly not ideal if you just want to approve only one operator and not the other. And I think that's exactly the situation here. All right, so look at Nick, we'll take a look into that to see if we can address it some way with the new API. And I think that should be this for now. Okay, let's move on to one final issue. This is the issue that only been tried in the past, I think. Sorry, just going to the this is essentially about adding a label for the sidecar for the SDO on the catalog source. That apparently doesn't work. We actually never support this, so but apparently there's the latest update that is actually working correctly.
Yeah, I
now.
tried both in the cluster and also kind, and then both were working. So I don't know what happened to him.
Interesting. So it's actually working now. Maybe he just using an older version of STO maybe, or issue. Yeah, so it seemed like you was able to make it working, so we can just ask him to retry this.
Yeah,
this.
I put the last saying try the latest ISTO version. I tried the latest.
Yeah, I can see the comment here.
Yeah.
All right then. How long is show go? Yes, I will comment on this and ask him to try it again. To see, even though you already did that, I will, remind him one more time, and then we'll close out this issue if there's no further comment from him. Thank you for trying that, though. We appreciate that for sure. Yeah. All right, I think that should be it for the OM right now. Let's move over to the registry side.
Hey, Vu, I had one issue. I got a notification about. Let me just post it back in the chat that I'd like to visit. We might be able to close this out, but I didn't check the resolution. I just posted it in the chat. So for context, the 0.19 release, we enabled manifest list images for all the popular Linux architectures. I think we could close this out, except I think it's the operator hub image is not multi-arch compatible. Does anyone know where that gets built?
I know probably a CI that actually building that. I'm not familiar with that specific upstream catalog source at all. But Kevin probably having a better idea about this, because they're having the whole website and the operatorhub.io website and so on about this. And I'm pretty sure there's CI running.
So maybe I can
somewhere
answer.
that you do that.
I'm
saying something, go ahead.
Yes, I'm maintainer of these community operators. So what is the question here? Because
the operator of IO catalog is not multi-arc.
Yes, it is not. It is, yes. The Kubernetes, pure Kubernetes is not multi-arch yet, because only we have this community operators for OpenShift, and this is what we are producing, the multi-arch. So for now, there was not a request to have that in multi-arch. So yes, maybe one can request it, and we can start to think and produce multi-arch also for that.
Okay. But the reality is we do support the multi-art piece if the catalog sort image itself having multi-art info in there. So
Yeah,
we
that's
technically
kind of
can
what I
close out
was.
the issue.
Yeah.
So yes,
Okay,
I'm just saying that it is possible to produce a multi-arch for Kubernetes operators, community operators for Kubernetes with that catalog you are showing. Yes, we can do it, but okay, I mean, this we have to will time. Yes, but we can produce, because basically our framework and pipeline should be ready for that. We just have to enable it basically. Okay, so just do a few things, but yes, it is possible to do if it is requested.
Cool, thank you. I'm excited to you, Tim. Can you comment on this and probably close it out? Does that sound good?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Cool, thank you, Tim. All right then. Is there anything else on our website that we want to take a look at before I move on to the registry side? All right. Started. This is an issue with the app running that having a little bit of a confusing error due to the fact that we having some warning. We had some failure if there's some of the stale image being pruned during the add process. I'm pretty sure there's a PR pending for this to fix this. Yeah, it's currently under review, so hopefully it will be as soon. All right, there's not much I have to talk about this. It's been fixed at the moment, so we should get it in resolved in a couple of days or so. Let's move on to the next one. To see it's about a readiness for failing on a multi-arc.
I don't know if Joe's on the call, but I was looking at, yeah, they essentially need to update the actual gRPC probe. So I think there's a PR up for that.
Yeah,
Outside of the
yeah, I'm
registry
here.
project.
Is it the
They're
PR
working
that
on
we're
it.
talking about? This is the PR we are talking about, right?
Yeah.
The 796, okay. It's not even topic for testing. I can see you comment this on this one.
ARM64 build wasn't working for some reason with curl, so they were going to go back and fix that. But I think this is fairly straightforward once they figure out what the minor issues are.
Okay, wonderful. Look like we've been working on, so that's wonderful. I'm excited to you for the moment, Joe. Just because you
That's
reviewing
fine.
it.
I've already been looking at it.
All right then. So this is not issue that currently been working on. Actually, gonna add my stall here. This is an issue with running end-to-end locally on Macs. There's also a PR pending already. So just a changing on a Mac file. All right, so there's a PR pending for this already. So we just need to take a look at that PR. Get this resolved. Do anyone want to be in charge of review this PR and get this over the hump? Maybe doesn't look too complicated.
Yeah, I can review it.
Okay, no problem. I will add you. Right, thank you, Dave. Let's move on to the next one. All right, so this is talking about the substitute for command. Is Nick is here?
I am. So I'm trying to remember the context with which I opened this issue.
Yeah, so you want to deprecate this command, and this is command under alpha? I don't think so, right? It's actually a mainstream command.
Yeah, but I was under the impression that all commands that work on SQLite databases are deprecated. But I think this one is not.
I mean, this isn't a command, right? This is a attribute in the CSV that manipulates the graph.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you, Chris. I think now I remember the context. Yes. So yeah, that's right. This is the attribute in the CSV, and it also there's an operation that creates the field or populates the field in the database. I think I was talking about deprecating this so that bundle authors can are aware that that change is coming. Because I know that we do bundle replacement through this field, and that process is about to be fundamentally changed. So there's some way of surfacing that warning when you use that field is probably required.
Yeah, this
So-
whole thing was a temporary measure, right? Until we get to the declarative index support.
Right.
Yeah. So I think one thing that helps us here is that just to use this field, when you run OPM, you have to pass like -- enable alpha or something. So anybody that's doing that like has to like type in the word alpha. However, I think like if you click that link down there where I said, looking at the enhancement proposal, like we're using this in production internally at Red Hat. So like we're gonna have to come up with whatever it is that we're gonna replace this with in file-based catalogs needs to be planned in advance, at least for our own internal uses, such that we don't just like all of a sudden break everything. I think upstream, it'd be nice if we like doing what you're said on it, like basically have some warning that says like, this is alpha, but also like we are planning on replacing this soon and it might disappear without notice. I think we probably need to have the replacement for what we're going to do already implemented and in place such that we can then just remove that and say like, here's the new thing. But I don't think the question, another question that I think comes up is like, is there a new thing for file-based catalogs? And that's where I was getting into like, do we want to have like a new release field that kind of automates this and make that something that the resolver is aware of? Do we want to have just like a documented procedure that you could execute against an existing file-based catalog that basically like builds the right upgrade edges in the right ways to do the substitutes for? So there's a couple of options I think we have, but it's not obvious to me that there's like a silver bullet here.
Yeah, I might have been missing a little bit. So I think I'll have to go and look at a little bit more in depth about what substitute was for. But my impression was that this was introduced because it was so painful, and or you couldn't see the upgrade graph that you were creating inside the database. And with file-based catalogs, now it's pretty visible what the upgrade graph looks like. And to me, what it sounds like is we don't need to use anything that is equivalent to substitute for. If anything, it's just documenting what is the procedure for editing your upgrade graph so that there's a new bundle image instead of the bundle image that you already had. But I might be missing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the substitute for is actually just to replacing a broken bundle image, essentially, without to remove that specific version of the update graph. So they're just basically having a substitute for while keeping the update graph the same. And right. I don't think that is a problem with the file-based catalog source catalog anymore, because you're just swapping the image field on the bundle and you should be fine, right? You don't need to review anything. And not review, but you don't need to
but
some any command.
You still need to update some kind of artifact. So if you already have that bundle installed, you know to replace it. Right, so you know that it's been updated, the image has been updated, otherwise you'll never even know. So you still have to update.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct. Because when that version already installed in the cluster, there's no way to update it anymore. It needs to having an update edge to another version or something like that to get this upgraded.
I documented how I would think this would work in file-based catalog somewhere. So if I'm pretty sure it's either in a HackMD somewhere or maybe in another Git repo. So I'll go and find basically like the algorithm for how to update a file-based catalog given a new bundle that should substitute for an existing one. And we can review that, and maybe that's the answer here. But at least that should kind of give us some somewhere to start.
Yeah, I think that'd be great, Joe. If you could put a link to wherever the documentation is and how do you do this thing in the file-based index, that'd be great.
Perfect. I'll go look for that. You can assign this to me.
Sure. Just a quick question. I swear I saw this somewhere, but is that substitute for is also a field in the DB? Is that correct?
Yep.
Because I saw that before. Okay, so I'm pretty sure the reason migration command does not take in account this substitute table, right?
Correct.
All right, so it's ignoring that. Okay. So that needs to be noted here, that migration won't work with this substitute thing.
Well, it'll work because the whole database gets copied over. The algorithm that the imperative workflow uses to know how to populate a new substitutes for requires that the existing substitutes for stuff exists. So it may not be that we need to keep track of that anymore when we have a file-based catalog. Maybe we do, but maybe we don't. So I wouldn't necessarily say that that's an immediate problem.
I see. Okay. Cool. Okay, so Joe will investigate this a little bit further. So that should be the end of this for now. Let's move on to the next issue. This also a Nick about the channel information. I think we did having a conversation internally about bundle and the channel information.
Yeah, I think we are aware of what needs to be done. So basically, for creating the SQLite databases, we were adding all of the channel information. So bundles, once you do OPM index add bundle, it would redo the upgrade graphs, redo the channels, all of that stuff. But that is fundamentally unintuitive, that in a bundle, because bundle should be portable to any channel, any catalog. And was I'm guessing always the goal. So now I think we have the opportunity of making sure that we don't accept or we don't require channel information or any package level metadata within the bundle. And I know that we are all aware of that. This is mainly for tracking because right now the files that we generate through some of the OPM commands, for example, the annotations.yaml, that still has the package level information, the channel that it's included in, or default channel, that kind of stuff. And the reason I think it's worth tracking this is because it's not a straightforward, yeah, let's get rid of this, because at least for a while, there'll be a period where bundles are used both in file-based catalogs and SQLite-based catalogs, where for file-based catalogs, we should not be requiring, or we should not be having those metadata. But for SQLite-based catalogs, we should be having those metadata, if that makes sense. So it's probably worth thinking about what that will look like for the time being, before file-based catalog becomes a de facto thing during the migration period.
Yeah, so for the obviously for the DB by catalog source, I'm sorry, just need to clear my throat real quick. Yeah, so I think Nick already mentioned that the fact that this channel information is a required, and the default channel is not required anymore, but the channel information is required when you're adding a bundle into a DB-based catalog source, because that's where we adding that specific bundle into a specific channel and so on. But for the file-based catalog source, it's not needed anymore. You can declare the channel information later on, and even reconfigure the channel if you want to, without any problem there. So gradually, especially for the file-based catalog source, the channel information obviously is not needed, and probably technically said that's probably a good idea to moving on the package level information off the bundle, so it can be managed in a more intuitive way than just bundle it with the bundle itself. We can begin with changing the generate command and how we build the annotation.yaml to no longer require the channel label anymore. But obviously, if the label annotation is missing, it will having an error when you add that to the DB-based file, DB-based catalog source. I don't think that's a problem, right? As long as it's error out properly on the DB side, then they know that it's actually missing some channel information, and they can add them it back in if they need to.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're talking for, I think
Technically speaking, the thing is, I just want to make sure that when we generate this and the channel information is missing, it is not failing right away. Because technically speaking, if channel information is available in the bundle and when we generate the file-based catalog source, it's just ignoring that channel information, then that's totally fine, right? Saying that we no longer consider that channel information is relevant to the file-based catalog source, and we can ignore it.
We can just add a new flag that kind of enables or disables what, or that kind of gives the subcommand the information whether you're generating for a file-based catalog or a SQLite-based catalog. I think that could solve it too. But I don't know if It sounds like there's a lot of pros and cons and some edge cases that we need to think about. It might be worth thinking about a little bit more. I don't know if you want to do this now, Vu, but the design discussion, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, is it just how the workflow will look like and how the command will consider which information is required and no longer required anymore, depending on the type catalog source that you're trying to build. So yeah, I feel like we just we just need to come up with a workflow that I think will working out well, and then documenting it and changing the command accordingly, and go from there. Because obviously there's no easy way to. It's obviously there's some sort of like a migration process and the workflow for that migration specifically to get this over the hump between the changing of the catalog source to make it work. Otherwise, there's there's not an easy process for this, I don't think. Anyway, we can discuss this offline later, but I think we won't agree on this. I'm aside to you for now, Nick, if you don't mind. We'll discuss this further. I think you're already having a dog for this, so that's even better. All right, then. Is there anything else to discuss about this?
If anyone wants to assign or work on this, feel free to in this sprint or something like that. But yeah.
Cool. All right, then. Let's move on to the lab issue. Actually, there's no. Some of this should already been tried in the last time, so I'm trying to see if anything else here that's not been tried yet. I think all of this already been tried. Some of them I actually forgot to slap tried here, but it's anyway. I just want to ask real quick, any other issue we want to bring up? I think we don't have enough time.
It's not an issue, but I created some PR to fix some of the issues. So if somebody can review the PRs, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
So
you link some of your PR into some issue
Right.
on OM repo. Is that correct?
It's in the registry side. So like 764 issue 764, I'm able to run E2E test locally and authorized.
Yeah. I think we went over the issue, and I think we assigned that to some people already, so they probably should look at your
Then,
PR.
yeah. Then another one a little bit down below. I mean already reviewed, but I got some comments, so I fix it. Then it should be ready to be merged, but it's hanging there. So if somebody review it, I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. I think I also saw that on one of your issue as well, and I think we have a signee for that, so they will look into it.
Thank you.
We'll get that PR resolved. Anyway, I think we run at the time right now, and I think we tried all of the new issue already, so I think we can close out this meeting a few minutes early. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining. Appreciate all of your input and feedback for the meeting, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, Vu.